Hello and welcome to another video, which we could say is an extension of the T4 series I did, as well as part of the ESS intro series. This one's really joined, as you will see later, with Vincent and Grant. And this came about because we wanted to see and show just how editing of documents, as well as execution of code in sessions by multiple people on the same box, can be made quite easy with Byobu. There's a lot of love these days for code, the editor, because it can share files and sessions, and that's really not bad. But Unix, Byobu, emacs have had this trick for a much longer time, and we're just going to show a really simple example. What it requires, and we're not going to go into all the details and basics here, is that whoever you want to share a session with has to be on the same machine as you. We'll be using a cloud instance kindly provided by Vincent. It could be your developmental server, your research group server, something where everybody can SSH to, and that's really it. You have to be physically on the same machine because you're sharing the resources on the machine. And the main trick then is to invoke the terminal multiplexer I talked about a little in the T4 series, namely Byobu, which really is a nicer wrapper around a long existing terminal multiplexer called emacs. And emacs makes this possible by persisting sessions, and in this case, sharing a resource for it. The main reason this works is that it works with the Unix property called a named socket. So the communication runs through this named socket, and whoever starts these sessions first has to give a session name because for this named socket, because the named socket is shared, and the sharing of the socket is effectively the sharing of a session. So in the example that we cooked up here, we're using emacs. We could also use Byobu, it's the same commands, and we invoke it with capital S and then the name of the socket. I'm putting the socket here in the temp file because it's really a transient resource. Invoke the command new session to start a session, and give it the group and session names with lowercase t and lowercase s. We're calling those just joined, a little boring. And then in some cases, you may want to give read and write modes on the shared session with changemod. In the example we'll be getting to at the end, we are all part of the same group in the Unix sense, user group others, and already have read and write access to the group, so we don't need that. In some other settings you might. It's a local sysadmin thing. For users 2, 3, 4, however many you want to join into your sessions, they will just attach to the session that the session creator created on the previous slide. So while on the previous slide we said new session, here we now say attach session, and we're doing that again in the confines of this named socket joint session. So again, we're giving capital S temp joint session, then saying attach the session, and we want the session that's identified by the label join, so lowercase t join. And you can either invoke this as emacs or as Byobu, and that's really all. And now two people are in the same session, can open the same document with Vim or emacs, run R, and really jointly control the cursor. It is the same session. Because it's a graphical, because it's a terminal TTY session, you can use emacs, have emacs persist outside of Byobu. You can run emacs within Byobu. I alluded to a couple of those tricks in the T4 series. It is a TTY session, so you can't directly plot, but maybe something like HTTP GD may help, but we didn't quite get to this. And then really this is not the only way to go about it. It's just one way that we like. You may be happier or have a setup provided to you via code. There are other things too, as for example, Replit.io. But we quite like doing this with emacs because emacs exists on just about any machine you can fire up somewhere, can support just about any mode or program, and is very extensible. One thing that you should keep in mind really is that these are shared sessions, so whoever starts the session and then communicates the named socket with others who attach to that session they all share the same files. So you don't want to do that on a machine with access to super sensitive files, no SSH keys or GPG keys, your bank statements and what have you. So keep that in mind. But on a research group server, as in this example that we have here in the demo, it works quite well. So that's really it. It's an easy, powerful, generic way to share a session. Works for Emacs, any console application, other programming languages, compilers, whichever you want, working on the command line. And while it has some limitations, for example, no direct sharing of graphical resources, it can really facilitate collaboration across time zones, as in our case. And the following live demo that we recorded shows that in just a second, and then we'll commence after I'm done with these slides. Thanks for listening. 1.
Okay, so I'm just going to follow Dirk's slides here, and I'm going to start up this Byobu session. This is directly from his slides. So, guys, I've heard about this really cool data set and this cool statistical language R. So I'm going to start a new file looking at this analysis, at this data set, and I'm told that the way you do this in R is you do the following. You go, what are we interested in? I'm an environmental economist, so I'm interested in fuel efficiency as a function of weight, and you have to give it the data set, and I think is it called mcars? Well, I don't know. Okay, so you guys, I'm going to try and run that in a second. But do you like my script so far?
That looks beautiful. Let me join your session and actually bring R up in here as well. And then we can go in and try to run this. But now it tells us mcars not found. What could be the case?
We are so obvious about this. All right, so the problem is that this is not the right data set name. So it's empty cars. And I think I can just run it by doing this. And in principle, the model is now estimated, and I can type something like this to see the results. Wonderful.
And I want to point out that my hands are in the air. So all of that was typed by Vincent and Dirk.
Yep.
And so we are interacting on exactly the same script that's running up on a box somewhere.
By virtue of a terminal multiplexer named Byobu wrapping around an older terminal multiplexer called emacs that does all the hard work. And we do all this by having joint access to a shared socket that we all three have read and write permission to. And that's really all that one needs.